Well, folks, we are just about there. In terms of modeling, there are just a couple of other little details to deal with. I do have this sprocket. I just wanted to show you a quick tip to do with modeling something like this. If I just select this outer loop, hit B for bevel, then over in the bevel tool properties, we can uncheck the group polygons option. Then if I click in the viewport and drag the red handle, it's going to bevel each of those polys independently, which is pretty stinking awesome. So now I can just grab this stuff and kind of scale it. Now I'd like to scale these, but if I scale them by default, it's just going to scale them all from a single center, right? Well, if we go to Action Center and down to Local, then it's going to scale each of those independently along its own XYZ axes. Same thing with Move here. So now I could B for bevel, do the same thing again. Let's pull these out. And also R for scale, and since we still have that action center selected, we can just pull that in. And that's pretty much all we need for a sprocket. Now obviously this is kind of a lo-fi sprocket, very low poly, but if we zoom back, you're not going to know the difference. You could take this further if you wanted, but we don't really need to. After that, I'd like to add a couple more pieces of geometry. Let's head up here to the top. We've got this little I assume this is where you dump in water in the radiator maybe, or, maybe it's fuel, I don't know. But anyway, there's a little inlet here that needs to have a cap on it. And I want that cap to fit down in here nicely. Now this is totally unnecessary, of course, because we're only going to view it from a distance. We could just drop a cylinder on top of here and it would be fine. But just to show you a nice little workflow trick, let's do this a little differently. I'm going to shift up arrow to expand this selection to get this entire interior bit. Control C to copy that, and then I'm just going to take all of this and hide it for the moment. H for hide, and Control V to paste. I'll take all of these polys now and go to Deform and Push, and I could push those in slightly, however much I think. Let's go in a couple of millimeters. Hit Escape to drop that tool, F to flip those polys inside out, and then U to unhide. Now we've got this extra little thing sticking down in here, and we know that that fits perfectly. So that's a great little workflow for making one cylinder fit inside of another. Now I'm going to take this and just hit P for polygon to drop a polygon right on top of there. And then I can just scale this out. Shift-click, scale it out. Shift-click, pull that up. Shift-click, pull it in. Shift-click, pull it in. Shift-click, pull it in. Now, those pulling it in multiple times there, of course, is just to get this n-gon in onto a flat area. And then out here on the edges, let's select these outer edges, give those a nice heavy edge weight all the way out. Now, all of this is sticking out a bit too far, so let's scale this in on two axes so that it fits a little bit more nicely. Select one poly, skip one, and go all the way around with the up arrow so that we have a nice pattern selection, B for bevel, and pull those out. Now, those look okay, but I would like for the edges to be harder. So let's hit Alt and click on Convert to convert this to an edge selection, and then Shift up arrow to expand that edge selection to include the adjacent edges. Then I'll hit Shift W for, weight map, so we can add an edge weight to those. And now we have some nice weight on that edge. Actually, I'm thinking that this probably needs that weight too. Let's take this edge and there we go. That looks more like it. Nice. Now, one other thing, I think let's just take this last little bit here. B for bevel, pull this up and turn on group polys this time. Just pull that up so we get a little bit of detail in the top of that cap. That looks pretty good. So those are some nice techniques, once again, for just adding detail really quickly. But even though we're only going to see it from a distance, it doesn't really matter. And finally, I want to drop in the steering wheel, and I'm going to do this in a kind of a shortcut way, okay? So first of all, let's go to the Basic Tools and Shift-click to drop in a torus. It's just going to put it here in the middle of the universe. Let's just move this down where we can see it for a second. Now I'm going to drag it up here where we want it, rotate it a little bit, something like that. Let's show our backdrop items for a second. I'm holding the Control key while I drag the rotate handles in order to snap those to 15-degree increments. One funny thing about that is you have to hold the Control key before you start dragging, otherwise it won't work. Okay, then we'll go to maybe the top view and move this over so that it's right in front of our driver. Yes, this is a US car, So we're doing left-hand drive on this sucker. And then finally, I'm going to take this and let's go to the right view. By U.S. car, of course, I mean that this version of the car is for U.S. drivers, not that the original car was, of course. Now, I'm going to take these polys, double-click to get those, and go down to Deform, and use the Push tool once again, and just push those in. And that's a great way of kind of just narrowing down our cylinder, or our torus, until it's about the right size. Now, I think that the original steering wheel we did on here, while possibly accurate, looks a little bit honky. It's a little bit big for me. So I'm not going to be quite that big. I'm just going to fake it in to where I like it, to where I like the size of it. Now, the important thing about what we've just done is that if we enable, of course, the visibility of our selected item centers, the item center is exactly where we want it to be. That's a really important point because we're going to want to position other elements right at that point. So moving things in polygon mode might seem nice and expedient, but you won't have the advantage of having that center where you want it. So now, for example, we can drop in something else. Let's go here to our basic tools, drop in a cylinder, right? And in poly mode, I'll just scale that cylinder down somewhat. Let's move the whole item in item mode down here where we can see it. And now I want to move this so that it is exactly aligned with our steering wheel. We have some excellent tools for doing that over in the Setup tab. Now, in the next series, when we talk about rigging and animation, we're definitely going to do a lot of work here in the Setup tab. Very powerful stuff. That is not this lesson. This is just a quickie. If we go up to the Setup tools here, select our cylinder, shift-click on the steering wheel, there are these great tools here for match and align. We can match the item position, and there we go. Now they are in the same exact place. And notice that the item centers are the things that get aligned. Then we'll do item rotation as well. And now those guys match up perfectly. We could do match scale, but in this case, they're both scaled to 100%, so it doesn't matter. Now with the cylinder selected, let's make that our reference center over here in the items list. We can go to poly mode, scale these polys in, pull them down. I'm just going to scale these out on the Y. And sometimes if it's going a little bit slowly for you after the first couple of scales, if you just R for scale twice again, then it kind of resets your sort of your index there, so it's going a different distance, different amount as you drag that handle. Go back to the right view here. I'm going to hide my body for a second. Let's just take, again, just with these polys selected, R for scale, and let's set our action center to origin. Now I can scale this back from that point, which is all I needed. Show that body again. That looks much better. Just need that to go all the way down in there. All right, and finally I'm going to take this face and just scooch that in until we like the result. Okay, so now comes the cheating part I mentioned earlier. I am not going to model all of the 4 spokes of this manually. Instead, I'm going to do it using the Wheelie plugin. So let's go back to the Model tab. And let's go here. First of all, let's find this guy. Okay, that's in there. Let's call this our steering wheel. I'll call this our column. Drop it up in there, then select both of these guys and Control-G to group those. We'll call this our steering G-loc. And now we can drop in our wheelie item. So let's go to Wheelie, New Wheelie. And number of spokes, I only need 4 of them. Spans, that's just the number of polys in the pizza slice it's going to create for us. Let's give that 12. Actually, I want 16 because it's only 4 spokes, so those will be pretty large. We'll set the radius to, I have no idea. Let's just do 0.5 meters. Hit OK. So that's way too big, but that doesn't matter. Now, with that selected, what we want to do is drop it up into our group here. Then I'm going to Control-click on that column, or any of those, by the way. Go back to the Setup tab, and we'll match the position and rotation. Perfect. So that's exactly where we want it, or pretty close to it. Now we'll just go back to the Model tab. Select that wheelie item. I'm going to use Selection Action Center. That is Action Center Selection, or Alt-S on the keyboard. hold the control key and then drag the rotation handle to rotate this around to orient it in whichever way I please. Now we'll go and scale this. Let's use this as our reference center. So now I can go to Action Center Origin and scale this stuff in so that it matches the way that it ought to, right in the middle. Perfect. Now one other thing, let's add some loop slices in here, or just one of them, I guess. I'll scale that in to about, well, we'll go all the way in here. And then select these polys, invert that selection, and delete what's left. And finally, all I need really is like these two, for example. So I'm just going to take those and delete them. So now we have our 4 spokes. This way I don't have to do this all manually. Obviously, if you are doing it the manual way, you can still do it. You just have to model 1 spoke and hope that the others will look good once you mirror them, or once you, radial array them. But that's just, I don't know, it's just extra work. This is much easier. So let's go to Fall Off Linear. And I'm going to scale this out from the origin, just to thicken that up on the inside. And then I'm going to reverse that fall off by clicking Reverse over here in the Tool Properties, and then R for Scale, and scale that in on the outside a little bit. Let's go back to Perspective View. I'm going to reverse that offset again, or that fall off again, and pull these back in a little bit so we have some angle on that. That looks pretty good. Let's go to this mesh item. We'll grab this poly and pull that in to wherever we think it should be. And then finish up this pillar. Let's select this guy. And I'll just go over to Thicken, click in the viewport, pull that back. And let's enable our linear fall off again. W for move that back. I just want them to be a little bit thicker down towards the middle. Perfect. So let's take this guy, Shift Tab to smooth it. We don't need either of the end polygons. Those are just going to make it round, and we don't need it to be round. I'll also add some loop slices in here. I don't know, maybe 6 of them, just a guess. And then I'll take 1 edge, 2 edges, and then maybe 3 edge, 4 edge. L for loop. Let's add some weight to those edges. That looks pretty good. Now this stuff is all matching up rather nicely. Finally, if we want to add more detail to this, all we have to do is just, pick up at any given point. So let's cover one more thing. Let's go back to the column here. I'm going to select this front face of it, and here I need to build out from that, like there's a hex nut, great big hex nut that holds the steering wheel in place. So with this poly selected, I'll go to Work Plane, Align Work Plane to Selection. Now I have the work plane turned off, but if I turn it on, there you can see now the work plane is right there on that poly, exactly where I want it. So we'll grab the cylinder tool, drag out a cylinder, and I'm just going to control drag so all 3 axes are the same, and then just set the number of sides down to 6. And voila, we now have a hex nut. I also don't need any segments. I'll just set that down to 1. Set it exactly where we want it. Give it the thickness that we want. And that's pretty good. When we're done with that work plane, we can say work plane, reset work plane, and that'll get us back to our automatic work plane. Excellent. So I think that's as far as we need to take this. Let's put our reference center back at its original position. And I think we are in really good shape, folks. This pretty much does it for the model. Oh, and of course, how could we forget? There's one other thing that we need to model here. Let's grab one of these wheels, and I'm just going to hide it. H to hide for the moment. And we've forgotten about our suspension. We need a suspension in here, and that's what connects up here in the front and then comes back and connects somewhere over here. Let's just do that really quickly. I'm going to hit N for New Mesh, go to the right view, and drag out a rectangle. That's about the size we need it. I'm going to pull this out to right about there. Give it some thickness, like that. Because the suspension is sort of a sort of a spring with a bunch of plates of metal that bend, and that should be pretty easy to do. Let's just connect that right there. Just put it right about here. I'm just eyeballing it. Now that looks okay, and this one we're going to need to add some edge loops. So let's grab 2 of these edges. Let's add some edge loops to it. I'm going to add 8 of them, so we have plenty here. We are going to need to bend this, so it's important that we have enough geometry here to bend. And finally, let's select this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, and also, of course, these ones on the ends. Smooth this out. We'll do Shift W to add an edge weight, and then just pull that out pretty high, so we get nice sharp edges on those. Now we can actually create the other pieces of this spring before we bend them all. So let's copy paste W for move and just pull it down. Then R for scale, scale it in a bit, and then copy paste W for move, pull it down, R for scale a bit. Copy paste W for move, pull it down, R for scale. Now, of course, we could be more precise with this if we wanted, but it's just not that important. And finally, we just have to bend them. So with all this stuff implicitly selected, all we have to do is go up to Fall Off, Radial, pull out our radial fall off so that we're not moving the ends, but we're moving everything in between. Do W for move, pull that down. Now I'm not liking the shape of this, the kind of V shape it's creating. Let's go to Shape Preset and change that to Ease In, and I think that's going to get us exactly what we want. That's looking pretty nice. Let's pull this up right about like so. That looks pretty good. Hit Escape to drop the tool, Escape to drop the fall off. And finally, I think all we need to add are the little connector pieces that connect this stuff in. And I don't think it's that important that these be any kind of realistic at all. So let's just grab this plane here. I'm going to say Align Work Plane to Selection. Go to the top view. So we're working right here on this guy. When you do change your work plane orientation, it is going to change what your views do, right? So you kind of have to reorient things as you go. So we'll just take this and move that where we want it. Scale that a smidge. Let's go back to perspective, pull that out. I'm going to thicken it. About like that. And finally, these don't need to connect up or, be perfect in any way. I'm just going to take these and B for bevel, pull those in. Let's add a nice edge round level to that of maybe 5. That's plenty, just to round that off visually. And then I think we'll just take these polys on the end and pull those in to right about there. That's probably as much detail as we need in this. Now, just to add a little bit of visual interest to this, let's go to our Mesh Edit tab and to Slice, or Shift-C, and I can just drag manually some slices across this guy. I'm going to Shift-Drag to reactivate that tool. And Moto's pretty nice about giving us a cool little preview of that. That'll drop in a couple of edges for us. Now we could select these and Alt-C to Loop Slice. And I only need 2 of those, I think. And I'll take this middle stuff, and this is all just purely arbitrary at this point, but I'm just trying to make that look like it's something. I don't know. Take that and copy paste it. We'll move it to the other side. Close enough. And we'll probably would want something similar on the front, but I really think we don't need to go to that extent. This is plenty. So let's reset our work plane. Okay, so we want to mirror this now, and actually that's, just don't forget, your item center is over here, and mirroring this won't work if the item center is still at the origin. We're going to need to go to Edit, Center to Bounding Box, Center. So now our center is where it ought to be, and now we can go to Duplicate tab, Instance Mirror, click in the viewport, pull that over to 0 on the X, type it if necessary. And that should about do it. Now we can add instances in the back as well. We might as well. Let's take this one and do the same thing. We'll do an instance mirror, click in the viewport. This time we'll go on the Z-axis and pull that back. And this time it doesn't have to be precise because we're going to move it manually. Let's take this and move it over a little bit. Go to the right view. Just move this around until we like where it is. That looks fine. and mirror that across the x-axis at 0. And finally, I think that's about it. Now we'll just take this stuff. Let's call this our suspension. Group these. Suspension. And put that into, well, since the bashing layer is in with the body, we'll put it in there as well. Now we can unhide. Okay, and folks, I think that about does it. We are done modeling.